Siemka, tutaj Ziuta, witam was w kolejnym odcinku na tym kanale i dzisiaj zagramy sobie w Stanley Parable, które wleci na kanał zamiast Minecrafta przez ten tydzień i być może przez parę następnych, a później może jakoś tam, nie wiem. Obecnie nie mam zbytnio ochoty na Minecrafta, no mogę mieć też prawo do tego, że mi się przejadło, co nie? Dlatego znalazłem taką gierkę zastępczą. Wydaje mi się, że bardzo dobra gierka. Czekajcie, ja tu jeszcze ustawię sobie język napisów. Jest chyba po polsku nawet. Tak, jest polskie napisy. I na dialogi. I wysoka jakość dźwięku. Tak. No bez przesady. Ha! Okej, jesteśmy z powrotem, także zaczynamy grę. Myślę, że bardzo ciekawą gierkę wybrałem, już dosyć stara, ale całkiem dobra.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Okej, dobra. Widzę, że możemy kucać, możemy coś brać. Nie. No tutaj mamy nasz monitorek, przy którym pracowaliśmy sobie. No i jak widać, wszyscy sobie zniknęli.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Sala konferencyjna. Gdzie tu może być sala konferencyjna? Chodźmy na razie za otwartymi drzwiami. Być może trafimy.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Po lewej, tak? Okej, co my tu mamy? Co to jest? To jest jakaś roślinka. Tutaj ładny mamy krajobraz górski. Tutaj to chyba morze jest? Dobra, nieważne. Ale jasno.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Okej, do gabinetu szefa.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
A chodźmy na dół.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason
brzmi
at
dziwnie,
all.
fakt.
None of it made any logical sense.
Dokładnie.
And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been
I to
on the tip of
faktycznie jest
his tongue.
zapętlone,
He
nie
just hadn't
mogę.
found the words for it.
Oszukał
I'm
nas.
dreaming! He yelled. This is all a dream.
Co jest?
What a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
O je.
Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not...
Co jest?
How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself, being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd, and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. He knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Okej? O, super. To nic nie dało. Halo, panie
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I'm real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Jeju. I się przestraszyłem, nie?
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
A nie Stanley?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, And in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Ojoj. W każdym razie macie już trochę pojęcie prawdopodobnie jak wygląda ta gra, o czym to jest gra. To jest gra o odkrywaniu różnych zakończeń, różnych naprawdę dziwnych spraw i możemy chodzić za tym co nam każe ten głos, możemy nie słuchać go. Dobra, tym razem pójdźmy tak jak chciał. Ciekawe, gdzie dojdziemy wtedy. Jest sala konferencyjna.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
No i tu. O, co? Executive bathroom? Nice. Jesteśmy.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, what dark secret was being held from him. What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number. 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
To nie, no my nie znamy kodu, no to nie, idziemy, jakby... Możemy zagrać na fortepianie?
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
Co on tam ma napisane? Chyba tego nie idzie rozczytać za bardzo.
2845.
A się zniecierpliwił. Ale przetrzymajmy go tak jeszcze chwilę. No, tutaj też jakieś obrazy.
Forgot, but it turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself. And Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
O nie. Gdzie my jesteśmy w ogóle? Co jest? Ale portalowe klimaty trochę, tak. O, winda. Wow. Jedziemy. Się zniecierpliwił chłopak.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him?
Jesteś wolny, Stanley.
This question would not go unanswered for long.
Wow. Nie, teraz to już naprawdę portalowe klimaty są. Co? Nie, czekajcie, to będzie na miniaturkę, nie? No, super. Wow. To jest guzik. Chyba nie mamy teraz innego wyboru, jak go wcisnąć. Chyba, że nam coś narrator zaraz powie. Panie narratorze, proszę mówić. Nie, to chyba taka cisza jest.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Okej. Jest jeden guzik z kamerami.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Typowa praca w korpo, nie? Co to ma znaczyć? Nie podoba mi się ten symbol.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
Nie no, ja myślę, że wciskanie przycisku to jest fajna
He
praca.
refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable, wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof, the heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content, walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life, for he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Jeju, to co teraz robimy? Niszczymy. Cztery. Okej, to 4. 2, 3, 4. Nie. Czekajcie, co to robi? Mogę to naciskać, ale to tak w nieskończoność? To coś... Czy muszę po kolei znaleźć guziki? To też może mieć sens. Czyli tak, rozglądamy się za guzikami. Przy okazji, co tutaj? Offline. Już nie pamiętam, jaki mieliśmy my numer. Może by się znalazł nas. Tu mamy 5. O, otworzyło się. A nie, czekajcie. Tu guzik jest czerwony, ale nie możemy go wcisnąć. Nie, ja muszę tę zagadkę rozwiązać. A tu? Mamy 2, mamy 1. 1. 2. Gdzie by była trójka? Mamy trójkę, słuchajcie. Teraz 4. To zaraz ją wciśniemy. I zostanie tylko 5. Ciekawe, co to? Okej, ostatni. A tu? Co jest na tym monitorze? Console disabled. To nie, to chodźmy dalej. I została 5. Naciśnijmy 5. I może uda nam się rozwalić to miejsce. Co? To jest jeszcze jakiś guzik? Może gdzieś 6? Aha. Gdzie ten kabelek idzie? No tutaj idzie. Ale to... 1, 2... 2... 1? Nie wiem. To coś powinno pokazywać? Bo z tego co rozumiem, to można by było jakoś dostać się do tego pokoju, tylko... No właśnie, jak? Jak? To jest bardzo dobre pytanie. Nacisnąłem chyba wszystkie guziki. Chyba, że gdzieś tu jest jeszcze jeden skitrany. Ale no nie wydaje mi się. Wydaje mi się, że już wszystko. No dobra. Mind controls idle awaiting input. Tam jakiś kodzik jest.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power,
Wow.
he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Ale mogę też to włączyć, prawda? No to co, niszczymy Matrix? Dobra. Ło! O, muzyczka jakaś wleciała.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away.
Dobrze.
And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do,
Ale piękne
or how to
zakończenie.
feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
No.
Stanley felt the
Whoa.
cool breeze upon his skin.
Ja nic nie dotykam,
The
samo
feeling of
chodzi.
liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
No i nawet bardzo płytalowe zakończenie, bym powiedział. Bo ostatecznie się uwolniliśmy. 427 to jest nasz numer, tak? Musimy to zapamiętać.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Okej, ale...
When Stanley came to a set of two
Dobra,
open
chodźmy
doors,
na
this
prawo.
was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first,
Na
just to
przykład.
admire it.
O!
Yes, truly a room worth
Naprawdę
admiring. It had really
przytulny
been
pokoik.
worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Naprawdę ładny pokoik, taki sympatyczny. No, fajnie.
Yes, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, here you sit
No
looking at
cóż,
these
pamiętaj,
chairs and
są
some
rzeczy
paintings.
ważne i ważniejsze,
Really
nie?
worth it.
Która godzina? O, godzina w ogóle leci. No,
At
ale
this
zaraz
point,
będzie
Stanley's
12.
obsession with this room bordered on creepy and reflected poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
Sugerujesz, że to przeze mnie? Czemu tu jest kubek? Kto wywalił kubek?
Stanley sat around waiting for more dialogue, but when a long time had passed and there was no more, he decided that the game was trying to send him a message.
To jest dokładnie to, co ja zrobiłem. No, to może jeszcze chwileczkę? Nie no, wydaje mi się, że to już będzie koniec. To są tak trafne komentarze, że to jest masakra. Dobra,
But
lecimy
at
dalej.
last, he'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
Co? Do not lie. If you are lying right now, stop. Okay.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Tak, ale to prawda, ja jestem słaby w rozpoznawaniu kierunków, ja się gubię na prostej, więc...
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by
No
yourself.
przepraszam,
I'm not
ale...
asking for me, I'm asking for her.
Dla kogo?
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Okej. Dobra, no czekała, ale kto? Okej. Idziemy.
That's her, Stanley.
O, się
You need to be
przestraszyłem.
the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another.
Dobra, odbieramy. Halo, pana pizza czeka. Nie, czekajcie, to tak.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just
Wasza
pulling the
żona?
bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right,
Okay.
now I want you to come in and tell me all about
Co?
Gotcha.
Co jest?
Oh, come on. Do you actually think you're a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
Ale mnie sprankował, śmieć.
This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
Jak to? Naciśnij, a mogę 2? 3? 5? Dobra, nie.
Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the
Ej, odczep się, to jest
inconsequential
ważna
nature of
praca.
his existence.
A mogę coś innego? Nie, dobra, nie
Look at him
będzie
there,
sensu.
pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now
Dobra,
he's coming back
człowieku,
to
ja
work.
rozumiem, że
One might
pracujesz w
even feel sorry
korporacji.
for him,
Nie musisz mi
except that he's
przypominać.
chosen this life. But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him.
Nie, on mnie zaczyna już denerwować. O, tu mamy TV.
And so he began to fantasize about his own.
Słuchaj, no śmieciu.
First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly.
I see you, w sensie.
So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Nie, nie będę już... Co się stanie, jak nie będę naciskał? Chyba nic. Dobra. P.
As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to
O nie,
fill it
to
with
się
many possible
rozpada.
paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions.
Jaka
And
żółta
down another
linia?
was a game with a baby.
Jaka
And he
gra
called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he
Zaspoilerował mi już
again,
chyba parę
and then
zakończeń.
again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Okej, no dobra, jak chcesz. Jak chcesz. No nie mówcie, że nic się nie wydarzy jak ten. Wypuśćcie mnie stąd. Ile czasu musi upłynąć? Nie no, on to robi specjalnie chyba. Ja tu będę czekał. Zobaczysz. Nie no, chyba faktycznie musimy i tak wcisnąć. No nie wierzę. No dobra.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that and he remains here? He's electing to kill himself. How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't. Not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my... We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again.
Co?
And Stanley pushed a button.
Czekajcie, co?
And I tried again. And Stanley pushed a button. And I tried...
Ojej. Ale to by było na tyle w tym odcinku. Mam nadzieję, że wam się podobało. Jeżeli tak, to zostawcie łapkę w górę, a na pewno będzie tego więcej. I cześć!